welcome back to the Tranquilitease. I'm your host, Marina, and today we are taking some lessons in pain with special returning guest, Auzzy Blood. Now, this is exactly the type of episode I wanted to shoot with Auzzy in the first place, but when COVID hit, it kind of derailed everything. But within our biggest pain points can lie our biggest epiphanies, so that's kind of where we're heading today. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, the rest of this video is going to be a visual montage of Auzzy performing some hella dangerous stunts that should absolutely not be tried at home. The following audio is a recorded conversation we had in the comfort of our lovely home. Please share your thoughts in the YouTube comment section whenever you feel inspired to add your spice into this melting pot of love. Before we dive in, please be sure to click the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, followed by the little bell for notifications every time I post new content, or click follow on any podcast streaming app to ensure you get the content you need when you need it. Auzzy has been performing sideshow stunts for about 6 years. He does it all: sword swallowing, human blockhead, eyesocket lifts, grinder play, meathooks, bed of nails, glass walking, animal traps, circular saws, suspension, you name it. He got his start on the streets right here in Las Vegas, where busking culture is huge, and he actually taught me quite a bit about becoming a showgirl because of this. In 2018, he was hired by Cirque Du Soleil to play the role of the Doctor in the first live-action thriller, R.U.N, which was unfortunately closed in March of this year. This role is analogous to a torturer. However, in this storyline, his victims end up taking revenge and torturing him by performing his sideshow stunts on him, meaning someone else is putting the sword in him. Someone else actually put the meat hooks through his face. All of this is to say, if anyone has any insight on pain, it's Auzzy. Hello, my love.
Hello. Thanks for having me on your show.
I have so many questions, so we're just going to jump in right away.
Wonderful.
So, what is the purpose of pain?
Well, it depends on the type of pain and how you're experiencing it personally. A lot of people like to run away from pain because we've been taught in our lives that pain is bad. When you burn your hand on the stove, that's painful, of course, because if you burn it bad enough, you might have to go to the hospital and get wrapped up a certain way because of the severity of the burn. But, there's again, different levels and different kinds of pain. When you're talking about something physical like a burn or something you're addressing with, the purpose of that is to protect you so you can be aware of what it's doing to your body. So that's completely abstract and usually separate from mental. It goes with mental when it deals with something of like how you're responding to that burn and the way it feels, the aftermath of how you might be afraid of stoves. So obviously the purpose is in a way to protect you. But when it comes to sort of mental pain or emotional pain, I like to describe as something we all go through. It's a spectrum of sadness and anger, all of those emotions that usually come out from negative situations. You can really learn from that type of pain, and the purpose of that type of pain is really to soundly, structurally understand your level of emotional reaction to situations. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. and along that dichotomy, then let's go ahead and split that into two then. So walk us through your process of dealing with physical pain.
Well, physical pain is something that you can overcome when you're aware of it. So for me, I subject myself to different things, like a perfect example, piercing my face with different needles. So that's known as a human pincushion stunt. At first, it's very easy to understand that type of pain because we all know what a needle feels like when it goes into us. We've all had blood drawn once or more. So I know what that pricking sensation feels like. The purpose to really understand and become one with pain, I guess, is a silly thing to say, but to understand it is you have to classify it in your own understanding. So you have to subject yourself to this pain. And that's part of something where you have to subject yourself to it to get past the fear. Pain and fear don't go hand in hand because they're two separate experiences. You know what I mean? Pain is something that's caused physiologically or mentally, while fear is all mental. It's not physiological. We have that flight or fight response, but there's nothing in your body that's physically going to react to something outside of itself unless you're literally on a ledge that's going to cause your heart to race. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Other than that, it's all mental. So when you can understand the type of pain and classify it in your own way, you can really shed it of its fear. And that's also like what I know in Hyperionism of becoming one with the shadow or understanding your shadow. It's taking those parts about yourself that you really don't understand, exploring them more. Or maybe you might have a bad thought that you think, well, why am I thinking that way? That's bad for, say, somebody who feels who's in a very heterosexual household, but feels like they have somewhat of a gay thought, or feels like they're attracted to men, or whatever kind of situation you find yourself in. You analyze it and go through it and classify it. Now, a lot of people get the bad side of the situation to where they classify it as bad because of what? Their external environment. If you're in a heterosexual environment, you're going to think being gay is bad, when really, in the spectrum of the whole, that's not a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can learn to classify these different types of pains and experiences and how you respond to them, you can learn to navigate through them mentally, if that makes sense, because you know, okay, this sensation is coming through. Just like when I was piercing my face, I had to learn where not to pierce because of bodily damage to my vascular system. And then I also had to learn, okay, what's the easiest type of skin to go through, literally by trial and error. A lot of what people don't realize is that you have to experience pain through trial and error.
I think it's really interesting, especially the way you bring up how there's a difference between pain and fear, because as someone with an anxiety disorder, to me, it's hard to pull that apart, which is part of my therapy, right? It's recognizing that, oh, once you take the fear out of it, actually the pain is not that big of a deal. That anticipation of it was really what built it up. And
Exactly.
I think that's interesting. I remember seeing a graph about there's a psychological study done. I'm going to find it and then I'll put the link in the description of this episode. But in regards to pain, when there was an anticipation by someone who's never meditated before, it's just this essentially like a bell curve, that the excitement is there and then it hits and the pain happens, the painful thing happens, and then it slowly comes down. But in a person who had like 10 years of daily meditation practice, it was just like a blip. Like, so technically in the moment that they were present, it hurt a little bit more than the person who was anticipating it, because that anticipation pulled it down, but it went away instantaneously. So, it's just interesting that you bring up how much pain we tend to inflict upon ourselves in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, a lot of the pain we experience is actually more of a mental placebo than it's actually like when you come to understand pain. The simplest thing is by like holding your hand over a live flame of a candle. We all did that as a kid, maybe at one point or another. Maybe I was just the crazy one that tried that. But you did it to a point and you experienced like, oh man, I got a little burnt, or sometimes you burn a little bit more. But you, in the end, you would keep going back and it was like, oh, this isn't that bad. But until you would like actually get like a burn like I got today on some searing hot metal, you can tell the difference. It's weird and it's hard to explain because of obviously a lot of people try to avoid pain, but when you can understand it, and it's not like I'm saying I go seeking out to stub my toe on the wall. I hate stubbing my toe on the wall. That's a pain I don't anticipate and it absolutely sucks and I hate it when it happens. But when it happens, I know when it's happening and I just sit there and I focus on it. I know it's going to go away. And the more I focus on it, the less it actually hurts. As strange as that is, maybe that's just how it is for me. But the more I can focus on like describing that sensation of the pain to myself inside my head, it seems to go down. It becomes more of a mental chatter than it comes the actual sensation jolting through my body.
I think it's so beautiful that you just said that, because totally just breaking the professionalism of this podcast for a second. Obviously, you and I are just always so in sync that I literally just perfectly flowed into my next question, which was, to me, the definition of the flow state, is when you can find that focal point and you are not only using the skill set that you have worked very hard on in your brain, but also you are, in recognition that you can achieve something. So when those two things come together and you're truly focused and you have one focal point, then you're in the flow state. And so the fact that you mention when you truly focus on it, the pain goes down. Do you think that pain has a role in helping you find your flow?
I mean, yes and no. Like, I wouldn't say pain. Pain is just part of the equation. It's not something that helps build up. It's a little bit more of like it helps me. Pain helps me understand myself and my reaction and response to things. While when I go into the flow state, it's more of this just it doesn't involve pain at all. I don't need pain to go into the flow state. Right now we're kind of in a flow state because ideas are flowing, they're not getting clogged up, words are just freely coming out in free form. There's not really a mental block. There's a difference between how pain it's really a hard question to answer because pain is just part of the equation. You know what I mean? It's just like in everyday life, it's part of the equation, it's part of the spectrum. So when you come to accept that part of the spectrum, you can understand it a little bit more. You don't need to control it. It doesn't control you. It's a well balanced. So that's a hard question for me to answer because for me, the flow state is just being, it's just understanding, it's being present and, not letting anything outside of yourself affect you. It's literally letting your mental creation come to life in the way you see it, the flow state.
That is awesome, because when I thought of that question, I specifically put it in here thinking of that emo perspective. You often hear artists or, writers or poets saying that, the pain that occurs in life is, it's necessary for the art. And, like you have to be this tortured soul to be good at shit. And I just totally fucking disagree with that. And so I love the way you answered that.
Like you have to experience good things too. I mean, look at Friedrich Nietzsche. He was an amazing writer, but his art and his philosophy wasn't recognized until years after he was dead, and he died by fucking what was it? As a horse, something with a horse. As a horse was dying, he went over and he said, "I understand you." And was like, it's talking to this like horse. And so like he went through a lot of crazy stuff because his philosophy was really, really, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for, not accepted at the time. But nowadays we look at it as, the power, the struggle to power and the will to power is something that really helps refine the understanding of you need your willpower to cut like a knife through all the bullshit and put yourself. But that just goes to show that you need to experience a balance of good and bad and not just, one side of the whole. You can't experience complete and total utter suffering your entire life and expect to be the best artist ever. No, you have to understand the good and the bad, because somebody who might go through a lot of suffering, they might turn to the bad and never see the good in things. I've seen that in a lot of people.
Absolutely. So when a painful memory does pull you away from being present, though, and let's say that you are trying to get into the flow state and this thing is just fucking with your focal point and, you need to get there. How do you deal with that? Especially, in a high intensity situation where back when you were in Cirque, you had people doing these stunts to you. Mm-hmm. So now you have multiple variables and you really can't be a variable. You got to be steady. So how do you deal with that in those situations?
Well, it's just about clearing your mind and knowing that those thoughts are a part of everyday life. They come and they go. Everyone has those thoughts. Everyone has negative thoughts. And for me, it's about, again, seeing the good I have. Like, okay, this bad thing happened, but do I need to focus on it because I have all this good stuff going on? That's where I see a lot of people struggling with anxiety or something that troubles them with depression, is they'll focus on these things, but they won't do anything to change it. And you have to, like, if you're feeling bad, you need to do something to cheer yourself up. It's okay. You need to give yourself that little oomph, that little push to change your thought pattern, to give you a little endorphin boost of whatever your brain needs to change the chemistry in your environment and your body. And once that changes, your thoughts will change. for me personally, it's just doing small things that really make my day go better, or just really enlighten my mood in whatever way, shape, or form that makes those thoughts unnecessary and makes the bad ones go away.
So there's a famous, or not famous, a rather cultural saying, we constantly hear like pain makes you stronger, pain makes you hard. But yet you as a human being are so sweet and caring and kind. And as the personification of pain, I feel like a lot of people interpret your art, well, however they view the pain. So many people think you're morbid because pain literally makes them want to die. Whereas when I look at you and see a man who deeply knows himself and where his limits are, it says a lot more about us than it does you. So when you look back at your art, how does it make you feel, and what does it make you think about?
That's a big question. So basically, you want me to answer how does it make me feel when I look back on my art now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an accomplishing feeling because I know where I started. Some of my art is very rocky and cringy, and like I didn't put enough thought into it entirely. So that's a good way to reflect, because I know what I need to do to better broaden my message of what I'm trying to tell people through that. Because the whole purpose of art is to put your inner subjective out to the world, so they can get a little glimpse at you in a different way. And a lot of the time that's misrepresented or misunderstood, which is okay because it's people's interpretation. I want them to see that dark and morbid side of things, and I want them to see my sweet personality because, again, I've had a good balance throughout my life of suffering and, happiness. I've had suffering in the things I've learned with my family and the mental, you know, disabilities I've had with my mother, and just a lot of the craziness I've dealt with in my life with how destructive my family can be. But I've also experienced a really loving father and family and friends that have helped me become who I am today. And I wouldn't be who I am without that, good or bad. It's again, it all depends on the subjective experience you put yourself within and how you react to that situation. Never it's never definable across like every person. Every person is a case by case basis, because you never know what they've gone through and where they're going or what they think or how they were raised. So you really have to look at that and analyze it.
I purposely made this question kind of vague and open-ended because, yeah, like when anyone tries to analyze their own art, it's like, well, what does your art mean? Like, it's a fucking like garbage question sometimes, but you just see this tapestry of everything that has brought you to that point, that thing that makes you stronger. So where other people see pain, you just see,
I see
what
pain
got you
in
there.
it too. I see happiness.
Yeah.
I see a little bit. Again, it's a spectrum of experience. You can't just define it as one, because no two people will look at the same piece of art and feel the same. So for me, whenever I look back on it, I'm actually still always learning new things about the old art I made, and just seeing new, I don't know, intuitive things I placed there without even realizing it, or a new connection that I made because of something new I learned now in the present. It's funny. It's like you can leave yourself little breadcrumbs if you pay attention to your subconscious enough, I guess.
That's very true. Very, very true. Do you have any last thoughts or just things you want to say about pain or getting through pain or dealing with pain, or, not allowing pain to fuck with your flow and your focus?
Just understand, it's a part of the human experience, and it's necessary in ways that we think are just intolerable and unnecessary, but really it's something that can shape your life in a better way. It may make you realize a lot about yourself you never saw before, and you may question a lot about your personality when you go through certain types of pain. But I'm not saying willingly subject yourself to it, but I'm saying be open minded to the fact that not all pain is bad, and that you can possibly learn from a painful experience. Obviously, you may not realize it in the moment, but again, that's what the open minded perspective is for. And remember, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to.
Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. I
You
love
are
you.
delightful. I love you. And thank you for listening today. Please tell me about your experience with pain and how it has shaped you as a human. Head on down to the YouTube comment section and tell us about it. Don't be shy. On a final note, if you haven't already signed up for my newsletter, The Martian Gazette, I highly recommend it because it is a free, sporadic dose of love, beauty, and pleasure. For more information, check out the description if you're on YouTube and marinamars.com if you're tuning in from another streaming site. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Until next time, my loves, XOXO.